You're listening to Station Zero. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting. We're past the 72-hour mark now. 3 days without night. No darkness, no pause, no sleep. The sun hasn't dipped once below the tree line. What's left of the trees anyway? Just a low, dirty gold, hanging like a threat above the horizon. It's not warmth anymore. It's not even light, not really. It's pressure, heat without shade, time without punctuation. I've rigged a blackout cloth across the broadcast window, but I can still feel it, pressing in from the edges. It leaks through seams, warms the steel desk, saturates the air. We used to say the days are getting longer, as a kind of casual optimism, a joke in the office kitchen. But this isn't long. This is forever. And the body knows. You can feel the dissonance in your ribs, a kind of cellular revolt, heart rate unmoored, brain untethered. The old clocks, circadian, atomic, metaphorical, are all melting. I slept for 43 minutes last night, or today, or whatever we're calling this. When I woke up, I thought I'd gone blind. Turns out the blackout curtain had finally held. The darkness startled me more than the light. That's the part that scared me. Some of you are still writing. One from the Selkirk Range sent me a note scratched into birch bark. We miss the stars more than we miss the warmth. I read that line 10 times before I broadcasted it last night. If you're out there still listening, your voice made it farther than most radio towers ever could. And if you're hearing me now, wherever you are, under tin roofs, in buried bunkers, or just lying still in the tall grass, waiting for a cloud to pass, know this. You're not alone in the brightness. I've been watching the light change, not just in hours, but in color. It's subtle, almost shy. The way it shifts. It used to be amber, then came the phase of copper. Now, the sky is something else. A bruise, deep purple and overexposed, like an old photograph left out too long in a shop window. It looks sick, like the atmosphere itself is swelling against the pressure. Atmospheric lensing, that's what it is. I had to look it up again in the crumpled remains of an old NOAA manual. When the heat rises fast enough and the particles are suspended just right, light bends around the earth like a noose. And the sun, or its echo, just hovers. We used to say time passes, but right now time clings. Won't move. Won't yield. It's stuck in the sky with us. Animals have gone underground or mad. The snow hares here have molted prematurely. White coats stained yellow from ash. I saw one run straight into a tree trunk yesterday. Just bolted, no sense of direction. Can't blame it. Even the trees are turning their leaves upward, like hands trying to shield a face. We thought we understood what heat waves were, but this is different. This is shape-shifting. The sun isn't moving across the sky. The sky is moving around the sun. People used to chase the light. Sunrise hikes, solar retreats, even fake sun lamps in winter. Now we barter for shadow. We dream of eclipse. There's no sunrise anymore. Only degrees, and thresholds, and the slow realization that even beauty, when untamed, becomes violence. So here I am, still watching, still describing the sky to a world that can't look up anymore. And if the horizon ever bleeds again, if color ever returns, maybe we'll remember it wasn't always this way. Marla once said, "When the nights vanish, so will the memory of cooling." She was right. Marla was a botanist, blind since 17. Her voice always had a softness that made you lean closer to hear it, like a plant reaching toward moisture. She stayed in the Anchorage corridor longer than most. She said she could still feel the difference in air, even when the rest of us had given up on barometers. She told me once, "We don't just sleep in the dark, Miles. We sort ourselves inside it." That's where dreams form, where memory gets stitched into meaning. Back then, I thought it was metaphor. Now, I think it was warning. Because I can't remember what cold feels like. Not really. I remember the language. Frostbite, glacier, snowfall. But the sensation. Gone. As if my body has erased it, file by file. Out of survival. My hands remember sweat. My skin remembers burn. But cooling? That's a ghost. There's a kind of madness that comes with eternal light. You start to see echoes. Shapes that shouldn't exist. Eyes flickering in windows that aren't windows. They say it's sleep deprivation psychosis, but I wonder, maybe we're just seeing too much. For too long. Maybe darkness was the filter that kept us sane. We built this world on the illusion of permanence. Light on command, temperature on demand. We outpaced the planet's rhythm, and now we're stuck in a stutter. A single note held too long. And all I want tonight, if I can still call it that, is for one breeze to slip through the cracks. One moment of forgetting the burn. Marla died 2 winters ago, before the last one melted. But sometimes I hear her voice in the signal static. When the nights vanish, so will the memory of cooling. This firehouse used to echo with sirens. Now it echoes with silence and the whir of a hand-powered transmitter. I see the smoke out west, a trembling red plume dancing above the tree line. Not urgent anymore, just constant. Like breath, like heat trying to say something. I think about all the places that used to fight fires, and how now we just watch them. Let them bloom. Let them speak. I've set a timer for the batteries. 15 more minutes of signal before I go dark again. So if you're hearing this, hold the shadows close. They're rare now, and precious. This is Miles Harrington, Station Zero, still broadcasting, still surviving. You don't just feel it on the surface anymore. The heat has gone deeper, past the skin, into the muscles curling beneath the bones, a warmth that no longer comforts. It stirs behind the eyes, makes thoughts slippery. You lie still and still you sweat. You close your eyes and still there is light. We are being cooked slowly, not by fire, but by persistence. I'm measuring things now in heartbeats. Not minutes, not days, just the rhythm inside me that hasn't yet stopped. Without the cooling that night once offered, our bodies have started to fight their own clocks. Sleep doesn't come the way it used to. It breaks apart into fragments. 10 minutes here, a blink there. You wake from shallow dreams with the taste of metal in your mouth. Hallucinations become familiar. Repeating sounds, phantom shadows. I've heard someone whispering in the corner of the room 3 times today. I live alone. It's the kind of heat that's hard to describe. It's not tropical, not desert, not fever. It's a constant, like background radiation, like a low hum through the marrow. It strips you of hunger, dries out the inside of your nose, makes your joints ache in slow pulses. I know one man up north who started burying himself in wet earth to sleep. Says it's the only way to feel cool again. Another drinks salt water by mistake and barely wakes up the next day. We're forgetting the little things. What's drinkable? What's poisonous? What day it is? And I wonder sometimes if this is what dying slowly feels like. Not collapse, but compression. The slow shrinking of function. The narrowing of focus. Until all that's left is breath and burn. If you're listening to this, find shade. Bury your head. Slow your breathing. Don't trust the light. It doesn't blink anymore. I've started keeping a list. It's not scientific, not official, just the names of places that have gone quiet. Seattle, 48 hours ago. Heat index hit 61 degrees Celsius before the last emergency beacon went silent. Some tried to reach the sound. The water boiled in patches. Bodies never sank, just floated and steamed. Vladivostok lost a week earlier. No explanation. Just the slow unraveling of messages, typos, delays, then silence. I picture the city cracking open like a copper bowl, all those rooftops melting, glass distorting in the windows before it gave in. Inland Iceland. We thought it would hold. But the geothermal systems failed first, ironically. Heat from beneath meeting heat from above. Greenhouses turned to gas chambers. I got one final log, a single line. We couldn't vent it fast enough. I write these names down in charcoal, on an old survey map. Not because I think anyone else will read it, but because I want them to exist. Somewhere. Even if it's just in the folds of my voice, these aren't just cities. They were anchors, places people fled toward. Now they're just echo chambers, and we're running out of those too. Maybe that's what collapse really is. Not explosion, but erasure. Not the end of something, but the slow undoing of all the places we believed would hold. Julian was one of the good ones, kept the relay tunnels functional for nearly 7 months after the northern grid failed, built a network of cooling vents under Fairbanks, hacked together from mining equipment and decommissioned air exchangers. He didn't sleep much, didn't talk much either, except over radio, but his logs were precise, clean. He liked structure, probably the last thing in this world that still resembled it. Until 2 days ago. That's when his last transmission came through. I'll play part of it now. Click, static, breathing. This is Julian, under Sector 4, temps rising past 44 degrees Celsius, humidity over 85%. Cooling coils won't stabilize anymore. The air's turning thicker. Pumps are failing. Too many bodies in here. I told them not to crowd, but where else would they go? Pause. Ragged breath. I'm trying to redirect flow through the east tunnel, but the walls are sweating now. Not me. The walls. Never seen that before. More static. If this doesn't hold, someone find the girl, Nora. She's still got cool blood. That was it. End of line. I don't know what happened to Julian. I don't think I want to imagine it too clearly. But I keep replaying that one phrase. The walls are sweating. Because that's when it crosses the line. When infrastructure becomes skin. When buildings exhale. When the earth turns everything into lungs and the only thing left to breathe is vaporized desperation. Julian tried to hold a pocket of cool, a stubborn bubble of reason in a boiling world, and when that failed, he spoke to us, even in vanishing. We should be so lucky. Yukon crossed the line last night. Wet bulb temperatures hit 35 degrees Celsius. That's the kill switch. That's the number where the body can't cool itself, no matter how much it sweats. Skin stops releasing. Organs begin the slow simmer. They say it's theoretical, that humans can't survive it longer than 6 hours. But the theory's not theory anymore. The reports are real. People dropping in the middle of breath. No warning, no scream. Just collapse. As if gravity remembered something we forgot. The silence is growing too. No more insects, the whine of flies, the hum of mosquitoes. Gone. Bees died last year, but even the cockroaches seem uncertain now. And the birds, those last wandering starlings that used to streak like charcoal across the horizon, haven't been seen in days. It's not just hot, it's wrong. The air has thickened. It hangs, it presses, it coats the inside of your throat with the taste of minerals and missing time. There's no weather anymore, just heat. And if air becomes something else, something unbreathable, something unfamiliar, then what do we become? I don't know. But I'm still here, still recording. This is Miles, still broadcasting, still surviving. There's a bunker just west of Barrow, sealed beneath the warped remains of a solar farm. The panels above are fractured now, half slagged from overload, half shattered by wind-scattered debris. But beneath them, in the cool dark of reinforced concrete, something quieter survives. Children. 8 of them, maybe 9. Depends who you ask. They were pulled from the site almost a year ago. during the last heat surge, the one that melted the far north relays and turned Anchorage into a fog of broken glass and scorched metal. Someone left them there. Someone also saved them. Evie did both, in a way. She's the one keeping them breathing now. She used to be a trauma nurse back when that word still belonged to hospitals and not to everyone. You can still hear it in the way she speaks, soft, precise, careful like gauze. I stayed with them for half a day, enough to take notes, enough to hear the way silence lives when it's crowded. They move differently down there. These kids. Not slow exactly, but deliberate, like they're underwater. Their skin is pale, untouched by sunlight. Their voice is even paler. Echoes of echoes, shaped more by proximity than pitch. Evie says they still don't sleep much. Some refuse to close their eyes altogether. Others hum when the lights dim, as if they're holding something at bay. She keeps a dim red bulb on at all hours. Says it's easier on them. That white light brings the panic back. I didn't ask what panic she meant. I think I already knew. There's resilience in that place, but also erosion. Not everything is scarred by burns. Some things are erased slowly, like color, or rhythm, or bedtime. You learn a lot from watching how someone flinches. The children don't look toward you directly. Not when you speak. Not even when you offer water or food. They look near you. Beside you. As if eye contact has become something violent. One girl, her name might be Kayla, keeps her hands cupped over her eyes even indoors. She removes them in increments, measuring each lumen like pain. When the generator clicks, she twitches. When it stops, she breathes. I don't think it's fear of light exactly. I think it's memory. Somewhere. That brightness hurt them. It's a trauma baked into every photon now. They speak in whispers, not because they're shy, but because Volume 2 has become a threat. Sound used to mark life. Now it risks invitation. Evie says they communicate through touch more than words. A shoulder nudge, a tug on cloth, the briefest brush of fingers. Time behaves differently around them. You can feel it. Like the clocks refuse to tick. They don't ask what day it is. They don't ask what happened outside. They don't ask if it will get better. Their growth is uneven. Some look stunted, others alarmingly accelerated. Puberty without regulation, maybe. Or maybe just the body adapting in ways it wasn't meant to. Evie said something before I left. She said, "They've never really known the dark, Miles. Not truly. And without the dark, where do dreams go?" I didn't have an answer. I asked Evie if I could record something. She nodded. Not a full yes, but close enough. So I set the receiver on the floor of the bunker, beneath a table stacked with salvaged water canisters and empty seed packs. The kids were playing. Sort of. Passing a ragged cloth between them in a slow circle. It wasn't a game with rules, just motion. But then, without warning, someone laughed. It cracked through the bunker like a match strike. Not a chuckle, not polite. Real, rising, startled, wild. One of the boys, maybe 6 years old, laughed so hard he startled himself and the others followed. It came in waves, sudden and irregular. Then quieter. Then gone. I caught it on tape. It's playing now. Laughter, distant and thin, like glass wind chimes in fog. And listening to it now, I realize it wasn't joy, not fully. It was release, a nervous system exhale, a reminder of something half remembered. Not happiness, but the memory of it. They stopped as suddenly as they began, like someone had closed a door. Evie didn't smile. She just whispered, "That's the first time in months." And I sat there still, letting the silence return, because that's what we do now. We record the rare sounds, the last sounds, because someday they may be all that's left to prove we still felt something. I was packing to leave. The sun still refused to move. Evie handed me a cloth-wrapped bundle of filtered snowmelt and dried beans. I thanked her, and she nodded, in that way people do when words feel wasteful. I turned to leave the bunker, and that's when I saw it. A piece of brown paper, maybe from an old ration box, tucked into a corner by the generator housing, taped in place with melted candle wax. On it, in the careful, spidery handwriting of a child, was a single sentence. "We want the dark to come back. No name, no plea, no drawing. Just that." It stopped me. Froze me like a fault line opening. Because what does it mean, really, when a child, barely old enough to remember stars, begs for something they've never truly known? I thought about that for a long time as I climbed the slope back toward the firehouse relay. The sun, as always, followed. Not directly, but above and slightly behind. A stalker of sorts. Patient, radiant, indifferent. And I wondered if we'd misunderstood night all along. We cursed it for centuries, lit candles to chase it, wired cities to blind it, built towers to rise above it. But it was never the enemy. It was silence, rest, the chance to hide without shame, a place for the mind to retreat, a frame for dreams to shape themselves. Now it's gone. And even the youngest among us feel that absence like thirst. If you're listening out there, if you remember what darkness felt like, keep it alive, in story, in memory, in wish. Because when the world runs on nothing but light, it's the dark that becomes sacred. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. I remember learning about the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, they called it, as if a name could tame something that ancient. A loop of currents older than any city we ever built. Warm water from the tropics moving northward. Cool water sinking south again. A breath? A heartbeat? The ocean's way of keeping balance. Well, that balance is broken now. The current has died. It didn't happen in a single moment. No great wave or crash. Just a slow exhalation that never turned into an inhale. The conveyor slowed, staggered, and then stopped. What happens when a planet's artery stops flowing? The signs came softly, like all the worst ones do. Sea temperatures began to stratify. Warm water piling on warm water, refusing to sink. Cold water sealed beneath, stagnant. Fish disappeared first, then the whales, then the pulses of life we didn't even have names for, gone, before we ever studied them. The scientists warned us, of course. They always did. Said the ice melt from Greenland was dumping too much fresh water into the loop, diluting salinity. Said if we passed the tipping point, the current wouldn't restart. That it had happened before, in deep time. That we were never meant to live through it. They were right. I imagine the ocean now, not as wild, but still. A mirror that's forgotten how to ripple. Heat trapped at the surface, cold entombed below. Nothing circulates, nothing cools, nothing breathes. A system that once sustained the climate of continents, reduced to silence. People talk about the collapse of civilization. But this is older, more final. The death of movement itself. The world was never meant to stand still. And now that it has, what does that make us? Oxygen loss zones now stretch from Nova Scotia to Senegal. That's over 3,000 miles of water where breathing has ceased. We used to call them dead zones, back when they were rare. Pockets of algae bloom and fertilizer runoff. Places you could sail around, study, mitigate. Not anymore. These are vast, yawning chemical deserts. Places where the water no longer remembers how to host life. Phytoplankton are the quiet foundation of it all, the invisible lungs of the sea. They drifted beneath the surface, performing photosynthesis long before our ancestors stood upright. They made oxygen, filtered carbon, fed krill, and everything upward in the chain. 80% gone now, maybe more. Some died from heat, others from acid, some simply starved, strangled by the same stillness that's silencing the tides. And as they vanish, so too does the scaffold of marine life. I've been tracking dissolved oxygen readings from the last no AA buoys still transmitting. It's like watching a patient flatline, only slower and across entire hemispheres. The Atlantic isn't the only one. The Indian Ocean is nearing collapse. The Pacific is holding, barely, but the whispers are growing. Fishermen, those few who still try, speak of pulling up nets soaked in silence, empty lines, rotting kelp, jellyfish, in grotesque overabundance, like the sea's last grotesque bloom. And then nothing. It's not just a food chain. It's a memory, an echo of planetary intelligence, a wisdom that lived in circulation, in balance, in drift and upwelling. We thought we could override that with machinery, but we never understood how fragile motion really was. The seas are going still, and in that stillness, something vital is being unmade. I picked up a signal last night. Weak, fractured, but real. It came from somewhere east, filtered through a sky thick with static and metallic dust. Took 3 relays and a prayer to piece it together. The origin was an old no AA station in Bermuda, last active 3 months ago. What came through was this. Station 0, this is Coastal Relay 24, readings at 0 vertical drift. Salinity destabilized. Mass stratification confirmed. Phytoplankton collapse. Crackle, hiss. Repeat, the ocean is no longer breathing. This is Coastal Relay 24, shutting down, then silence. Just that phrase. The ocean is no longer breathing. It hit me harder than I expected. I sat there after the recording ended, just letting that sentence echo through the metal bones of the firehouse. Because what else can you say? The lungs of the world have failed, and all we can do now is listen to their last breath on repeat. I grew up fishing. My brother and I would spend summers on the coast of Maine. We'd wake before sunrise, ride out in a rust-bitten skiff, and drift for hours, waiting for bites that rarely came. But it didn't matter. It wasn't the fish we were chasing. It was the music. The water spoke in rhythms. Waves on hull, gulls in distance, the slow slap of rope against weathered wood. Even the silence had shape. The sea was a place that pulsed, that breathed. That's what I miss now. Not the fish, not the boats, the breath. I haven't heard a true tide in over a year, not one with rhythm. The shorelines don't pull or return, just slosh, like something broke in the machinery and no one remembered how to fix it. Sometimes, at night, I press my receiver to the edge of the water and listen. Not for voices, not for signals, just for motion. It doesn't come. And that's when the memory strikes hardest. The days when we thought the sea was eternal, when we thought it could hold everything we dumped into it and still forgive us. We mistook depth for permanence. But even oceans have thresholds. Even songs grow tired. The sea used to sing, not in words, but in something deeper. A kind of planetary prayer, one we forgot how to answer, and now the lines are down. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. They said the sun gives life. No one warned us what it could take when unchained. The solar overcharge hit 2 weeks ago, not with heat, that came later, but with power. Raw, unfiltered radiation surged through the atmosphere, bypassing the weakened magnetosphere like a ghost through skin. Anything still tethered to a live circuit shorted out. Northern relays, Arctic satellites, ground stations, gone in minutes. I watched the meters spike here in the firehouse. Volt screaming like a pulse trying to outrun a heart attack. We cut breakers, unplugged everything, rerouted through rusted capacitors, still lost the uplink, and then came the EMPs. Ionization clouds, not bombs, did the rest. The atmosphere itself turned hostile to electricity. Transistors popped like old joints. The copper wires buried in the snowfields began to hiss. Even radios, Analog, stubborn, beloved radios began to fry. I buried two in salt to try and shield them. Only one made it. We always imagined the grid going down as a bang. Sabotage or war or some kind of cyber strike. But this wasn't that. It was erosion, inversion. Light turned against us. No flash, just silence. The hum stopped. The lights dimmed. The clocks quit blinking. And we were left alone, not in the dark, but in the brightness, with nothing to catch our voices when they fell. There's a difference between silence and stillness. One is peace, the other is loss. And ever since that moment, every signal I send out feels like I'm yelling into a canyon that forgot how to echo, but I yell anyway. We power this station now with cranks. Old-fashioned, grease-slick, arm-burning cranks. 1 revolution for 6 seconds of signal. 200 for a full broadcast cycle. There's poetry in the absurdity. There are others doing the same. A teenager near McGrath built a foot-pedal dynamo from a disassembled bike and half a snowmobile coil. He powers his grandmother's respirator. They've made it 9 days. In Ontario, someone's using thermoelectric converters, a stovepipe, and a melted solder gun wired into what was once a home stereo. He relays short bursts every dusk. No words, just Morse. Still here. Tap, pause, tap. That's hope now, coded and intermittent. There's a group in Spokane who built a hand wound alternator they call the choir. Every rotation plays a note. They record music on tape and send it by courier to anyone with a working deck. The last one I received was a cello piece. Slow, scraping, hollow. It sounded like the earth's lungs, trying to remember breath. We crank, because there is no other way. The sun took the surge, then the batteries, then the will of the wires. So now we make do with wrists and knees and pedals. We become the grid. And in doing so, we discover rhythm again, in turns, in breath, in repetition. In what it means to make power by hand when everything automated has abandoned us. This station lives because my shoulder hasn't failed yet. Because motion is prayer. Because even against the sun we keep turning. Ray was one of the few who fought back with elegance. She wasn't military. Not an engineer in the traditional sense. Just a former lighting technician for a touring orchestra. Back when people still bought tickets and filled seats and clapped at the right time. When the relay started failing in the Rockies, Ray didn't flee. She gathered broken mirrors from cars, collapsed homes, signal towers, and reassembled them like mosaics on the hilltops, called them sun diversions. She wasn't trying to block the light. She was trying to scatter it, reroute the angles, bend it away from their shelter, a carved-out tunnel in an old ski lift maintenance station. For a while, it worked. They grew beans in the shade she cast, charged radios through salvage panels cooled just enough by her mirror net to hold voltage. They even ran nightly broadcasts, short, musical, hopeful, 3 minutes every night at 2 a.m. UTC. Then the mirrors fractured. We don't know what happened. Maybe wind, maybe overheat, maybe time. Her last transmission came 5 days ago. Here's what I salvaged. This is Ray, tunnel line 12. Divergence angle failed. Light fractured the arrays. Thermal rise critical. We're relocating underground. If anyone hears this, keep building mirrors. Even broken light can be bent. Pause, breath. Static. Hints. This is Ray, signing off. She always ended her broadcast with a song. But this time there was none. Just the whine of a melting frequency. A slow dissolve into silence. I keep her phrase close now. Even broken light can be bent. It's more than advice. It's doctrine. It's faith under heat. And maybe, if we find enough reflective things, metal, glass, memory, we can still shape the sun into something survivable. I think about that a lot. Why we keep broadcasting. Why I keep turning the crank, pressing the button, waiting for the needle to twitch, for the static to clear. It's not information anymore. Not weather reports. Not evacuation routes. Those ended long ago. It's witness. It's reminder. It's the sound of someone choosing to speak, even when no one may respond. Because a signal means you're still trying, still reaching, still mapping yourself against the silence. A signal means I'm here. I was here. I mattered. And even when the grid is gone, when the towers melt and the batteries die and the light drowns every wire, as long as one voice remains humming low against the static, the world isn't finished yet. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. There's something strange happening out there in the dust. Not strange like thunder or tremor. Not violent. Strange like memory that moves. We've started calling them the Mirage cities. They rise at dusk mostly, when the heat hasn't yet exhaled and the air ripples like breath held too long. Entire skylines shimmer above the cracked earth. Glass towers, lit windows, even movement. Tiny silhouettes passing behind curtains that don't exist. They float on the edge of vision, precise enough to tempt belief, blurry enough to deny proof. You stare long enough and you start naming them. I've seen what looked like Denver. Someone else swears they saw Seattle, full skyline, Space Needle and all, pulsing like a signal behind smoke. One of the Alaskan relays reported a vision of old Juneau perfectly intact, reflecting against what used to be permafrost. We know what they are. Refractions, light bent by heat gradients, refracted across miles of superheated atmosphere. It's the Earth's new way of remembering itself. But that doesn't explain why they seem so right, why the buildings shimmer in places they used to be, why they appear where people once gathered in numbers, why they pulse, flicker, vanish, then return in the same spot days later, like hauntings. Some say they're optical illusions, others say they're warnings. Me? I think they're memories the planet hasn't let go of yet. Not ours, hers. Cities she carried too long to forget. And now, under this broken lens of heat, she's projecting them back to us. Not to confuse, but to remind. Or maybe I've just been awake too long. Maybe that's what this all is. Sleep deprivation, sunstroke, guilt. But I keep watching. Because sometimes it almost feels like they see us too. His name was Eli. 17. A scout for the Ember Line. One of the last mobile info crews left in the West. I didn't know him well. Only heard about him through the tangle of voices that still bounce between towers on clear nights. But he mattered. You could hear it in how people said his name. The way they paused after. 3 weeks ago, he spotted a mirage near the edge of the Blackstone crater. A city hovering above cracked shale. Not flickering, not shifting, still, stable, tall, whole. He told the others it looked like Flagstaff. Said he remembered that skyline from before. Said he saw a flag moving in the heat. They warned him. Told him not to go. That it was just light. Just memory. But he packed his pack anyway. Took 3 canisters of filtered water, 1 map, and a hope so strong it made him deaf. He walked into the shimmer. They watched him vanish. No scream, no sound. Just distance, distortion, and then nothing. A week later, they found his boots, still laced, upright, as if he'd stepped out of them to cross into something else. I think about Eli when I look at the horizon, about how sometimes we'd rather walk toward a beautiful lie than stand still in an ugly truth. I don't blame him. I might have done the same. We used to map the world with lines, borders, roads, rivers. Now we map it with shimmer. A new kind of geography, made not of substance but memory, heat sculpting vision into places we once lived, places we once loved. And the mind, hungry as it is for order, starts believing what the eye can't disprove. You see a shimmer, and you want it to be a city, a church, a kitchen light left on, a signal, a face at a window. People don't follow maps anymore. They follow the mirages, the flickers, even knowing they'll vanish, even knowing the closer you get, the less real they become. That's not madness, that's longing. We never realized how much of Survival was tethered to imagination. How much hope depends on hallucination. Because once the structures fell, we lost more than shelter. We lost the visual anchors that told us the world was still behaving. We lost the skyline, the grid, the glow, and so we chased new ones, even if they're made of distortion. I heard someone say yesterday, maybe the cities we lost are being projected by the people who loved them most. Maybe we are the mirages, the last flickers of lives that meant something. And the earth is just remembering us the only way it knows how. Last night, a woman from the western edge sent a shortwave through 3 broken relays. She said she saw a city, not shimmering, but burning, not smoke, light, a tower of it, sharp, structured, like a cathedral made of sun. It blinked in rhythm. She pulled out an old Morse decoder, said the pattern was slow, deliberate, repeating the same phrase again and again. Return to where it burned. The answer sleeps in fire. No one else could confirm it. No coordinates, no second signal, just her voice and her tremble. But something about it stuck with me, because light isn't random anymore. Not here. Not now. It wants something. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's warning. Or maybe it's the planet trying to speak through the ruins, to show us where we stopped listening. If you're near the western edge, watch the sky. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. The signal came broken, faint, clipped by static and stretched thin across 3 relay towers. It wasn't even meant for me, but sometimes these things arrive like birds, off course, unexpected, trembling with news. I was about to power down when I caught it. Just a fragment of voice, barely louder than the noise floor. Verdance, confirmed viable, Appalachian spine, east of Boone. Repeat, growth observed. Verdance. That was it. Then the crackle returned. Dust returned. Silence resumed. But it was enough. Verdance, a name someone chose, deliberate, soft, almost romantic, as if they knew it would travel, as if they wanted it to be repeated like a prayer. A green zone, not a rumor, not a myth, a real one, hidden deep in the ruins of the old Appalachian corridor, where collapse hit slow and quiet, where the hills held shape long after the cities crumbled. Wind deflection, subterranean aquifers, natural barriers, all the things that once sounded academic, now read like gospel. I don't know who first found it, but I know who brought it back. A scout named Hector, Emberline, same crew that lost Eli to the Mirage. Hector made it through locust fog, thermal pits, broken bridges, and he came back with a voice, a signal, and a satchel of life wrapped in oilcloth and hope. I haven't seen it, I haven't touched it, but I believe it's there, and sometimes that's enough. To hear something green still lives, that somewhere chlorophyll is working, that not all roots forgot how to reach downward. Hector's report came in the form of an audio log, scuffed by sand, wound by hand, played back on a salvaged cassette head. I bolted to the desk with wire from a burnt drone frame. His voice is cracked, dry, but steady. I left from Point Red 8 days post-burn, took the northern slope, avoided direct heat corridors, slept in a septic tunnel outside Charleston. 4 rats, 1 raccoon, no people. Made my way down through Roan Mountain. Whole ridgeline is brittle, stone flaking like old bread. Got pinned down by locust fog near the edge of Avery County. Waited 32 hours. Didn't blink once. Eyes still sting. He keeps going. Saw signs of something changing near what used to be Elk Park. Grass like threads, weaving through cracks. Not yellow, not brown. Green. Subtle, but real. Followed it, slept in stints, walked by memory more than map. The road disappeared somewhere near mile marker 183. Trees started reappearing. Sparse, thin, but upright. They weren't burned. They were waiting. His voice shakes when he says the next part. Then I found the stream. Cold water. Actual cold. Coming down through limestone cuts. and around it, moss, lichen, a cluster of fungi that pulsed when I touched it, spore traces, and something else, leafy, wide. Spinach, maybe, or close enough to pretend. I sat down and cried for the first time in months, not from fear, from recognition. The world still remembers how to grow. Hector made it back 3 days later. Barely. One boot melted, one eye swollen shut, lungs full of ash, but alive, and holding a pouch filled with spores, sealed tight, protected like it was the last scripture of a forgotten faith. I don't know how long verdance will hold. Maybe it's already gone. But the fact that it happened once means it can happen again. Something green grew again, and someone lived long enough to see it. The spores were real. Tiny, salt-sized specks stored in a cloth pouch stitched from an old glove, wrapped tight in waxed leather, pressed against Hector's chest the whole way back. They survived the heat, the ash, the hunger. Inside were lichen strands, pale green, like memory, bits of edible fungus, rough and meaty, and something broad-leafed, dark-veined, not quite spinach, but alive, sturdy. Evie, from the Barrow bunker, confirmed their viability. She crushed them in water, watched them swell. Her voice shook. She called it the first promise we've held in our hands this year. No one's planting yet. Not really. But the idea, it's seeding us faster than the spores themselves. And in a world where the atmosphere kills faster than infection, where breath feels like boiling, that kind of patience, that kind of cultivation feels like rebellion. The silence around these spores is reverent. We don't speak too loudly near them, don't argue, don't breathe without purpose. There are few things we handle gently anymore. But this we cradle. I think we were wrong about recovery. We imagined it loud, triumphant. Cities lit again. Sirens swapped for symphonies. The kind of victory that echoes across mountaintops. But maybe it won't look like that. Maybe it never did. Maybe recovery is a moss bloom on an old wall, a root slipping beneath concrete, a child whispering a new word into dirt. Verdance isn't salvation. It's not wide enough, not permanent, not guaranteed, but it's proof that life doesn't need permission, that the earth doesn't mourn the way we do. It waits. It adapts. It tries again. We've burned her lungs, scalded her rivers, lit her skin on fire, and still she turns soft toward a shaded stream and lets something green return. If you're listening, if you're still alive, still wandering, remember this. It won't come in force, it will come in spores. In shadows, in silence. Hope wears the mask of quiet. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. I still have the recording. I keep it wrapped in cloth, tucked inside a rusted tin that used to hold mints. A voice preserved in a coil of tape. Passed through 3 relay towers and 1 old ham station. In the flats. I play it once a year. Only once. It was her last message. My sister, Corinne. She stayed behind during the first dome collapse, the one that took the Midlands. Said she didn't want to run anymore. Said the heat would either take her or pass her by. Either way, she'd face it standing. I called her reckless. She called me afraid. We weren't wrong about each other. The message arrived 2 days after her town went dark. Hey, Miles, if you get this, the sky here is like bone. Brittle and too white to hold meaning. The trees dropped their leaves in 1 hour. The birds flew in circles until they fell. I've sealed the vents, boiled the water twice. It doesn't matter. The heat comes through the metal now. It hums. If I can't be in the night, I'll become it. Then silence. A pause too long. A breath that held everything. You were right to run, but don't run forever. Find a place, rest your voice, sing something. Click. She became the night. I've said that phrase to myself 1,000 times, as if saying it makes it noble. But truth is, she was scared. I know that now. I hear it between the syllables. in the way her breath broke rhythm, in the way she softened her consonants to keep from weeping. And still, she spoke. That's what stays with me. Not the temperature, not the dome, but that she spoke, knowing it might be the last thing the world ever heard of her. It started an hour ago. A slow hiss at first, then a low grinding rasp, like the earth clearing its throat. Salt storm. The wind carries the ocean now, not in waves, not in spray, in powder. Crystalline ash born from evaporated coastlines and cracked seafloors. The air outside glitters like bone dust. Each particle fine enough to pass through filters, sharp enough to ruin memory cards, heavy enough to warp the needle on this transmitter. I've pulled everything inside. Reels, batteries, maps. Still, the storm is finding its way in. A fine film already coats the console. I wipe it off, and it returns, like grief, like regret. The salt eats quickly. Plastic becomes brittle. Wiring corrodes in real time. The receiver hums low, a kind of death rattle, soft and steady. If this message cuts out, you'll know why. Funny how a storm of salt feels more biblical than fire ever did. I watch it accumulate on the window ledge. It forms shapes, lines. I imagine they're her handwriting. Curves like hers, letters forming words she never had time to say. The pressure outside is falling. The tower groans, not from weight, but memory. And as I sit here, voice low, signal flickering, I realize this may be the closest thing to shelter I've felt in months. Not because I'm safe, but because I'm still inside something, and in a world built on collapse. That counts for more than we admit. I found her journal once, after the dome, after the call, tucked between 2 cans of freeze-dried peas in the back of her kitchen. She wrote in ink that faded at the edges. Water damage, maybe. Or heat. Or time. But the words were still there, fragile but clear. Here's one entry, dated just 3 days before she vanished. It rained salt today, thin as lace, sharp as betrayal, fell sideways like it had changed its mind midair. The radio said it's from the ocean's drying salt carried on wind currents, woven through jet streams, sprinkled back down like confession. I tasted it on my tongue. It burned, like something once sacred had soured. It coated the porch, the curtains, my hands. The tomatoes wilted. The basil turned white at the edges. I didn't cry. I just watched. There's something profoundly unfair about the sky weeping minerals when what we need is mercy. Maybe the weather has become grief, and this is just its way of remembering us. She closed the page with no signature, just a pressed petal dried flat between paragraphs. Something small, something she tried to keep alive. I keep that page near the console now, not to read often, just to know it exists. Because in a world where everything vanishes too fast, memory is resistance. She said the sky would cry salt. And today, it did. I stood outside for a moment, just one, and let it fall on my palms. It burned. Not fire, but sting. The kind that comes from loss too long, unspoken. She saw this before any of us, felt it in her bones, wrote it into paper, spoke it through wires, and now her prophecy coats the roof of this tower. We used to trust the sky. Now we parse it for omens, for apologies, for signs we haven't been entirely abandoned. If she were here, she'd say it wasn't an ending. That storms, even salt ones, cleanse in their own cruel way. I'm not sure I believe her, but I hear her voice anyway, echoing through static and rust, whispering in between the code. If I can't be in the night, I'll become it. This is Miles Harrington. Still broadcasting, still surviving. The signal came brittle, thin. A whisper passed through 2 dying satellites and a ground relay station no one's claimed in years. It sounded like static at first, like most things do now. But underneath, something pulsed. A rhythm, a phrase repeated every 12 seconds, coded, then decoded, stretched across the last ragged strand of what we once called the cloud. Eclipse, 6 months, possible atmospheric veil? It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was something rarer now, a forecast, the kind we used to trust, the kind that had charts and margins and certainty. This one didn't. But it had something better. A pause. Because that's what an eclipse is, isn't it? A pause in the light. A borrowed shadow. A breath held by the sky itself. They say it could come from a volcanic chain in the southern hemisphere. A ring of calderas that cracked open like ribs. The ash plume still rising, too wide to see with a single satellite, too thick to burn off quickly. If it spreads, if the winds bend in just the right direction, we might get partial global dimming. A veil. A film. A moment. Some say it could bring temperatures down. Maybe 2 degrees. Just enough to ease the wet bulb threshold. Just enough to buy us time. I don't know who sent the signal. I don't know what they hoped it would do, but I sat there for an hour after decoding it, staring at the walls like they might soften. Because when everything's been bright for too long, even rumor feels like shadow. It's not a fantasy, it's chemistry. Volcanic ash, especially from sulfur-rich eruptions, contains aerosols that reflect solar radiation. When they reach the stratosphere, they scatter sunlight, dim the sky, lower temperatures. Not by much, not forever, but for a while. Mount Pinatubo did it in 91, dropped global temps by 0.5 degree. The year without a summer in 1816 was the result of Tambora. We used to treat those events as anomalies. Now we treat them as possibilities. The chain in question spans from the South Sandwich Islands across to an underwater fissure near the Chilean Trench. Seismic readings were erratic 2 months ago. Now the ash is confirmed, thick enough to blind satellites for a radius of 300 kilometers. There's no one left with authority to say how high it will rise or how far it might reach. But if the particles hit the upper layers, if they catch the winds, we could get clouding. Not storm clouds, ash clouds, like bruises pressed into the dome of the sky. I'm not saying it's a cure. It's not. 2 degrees won't fix this, but 2 degrees is the difference between fever and coma, between collapse and pause, between breathless and breathing. And that's worth watching the skies for. I've told myself not to feel it, not to name it, not to give it weight, but still, there it is. Hope, measured in fractions, in degrees. Not enough to rebuild, but maybe enough to sleep without hallucinating, to stand in the sun and not feel like you're dissolving, to boil water without guilt, to walk a mile without calculating sweat loss. What is 2 degrees? 2 degrees is memory of what it used to feel like when morning didn't mean danger, when the sun touched your skin and didn't leave it blistered. 2 degrees is the difference between a body failing and a body coping. Maybe we've shrunk so far that even decimal points feel divine. Maybe that's okay. The dust isn't here yet, and maybe it never will be. Maybe it will pass us by like so many other promises. But I still catch myself staring at the sky and wondering, what if it dims? Not forever, just long enough for the planet to exhale. Long enough for us to remember that the light wasn't always a punishment. I'm ending tonight with a song. Something from the before times. Charles Mingus, Moanin', found the record in a cellar beneath a collapsed bookstore. Outside Sitka. Vinyl warped, sleeve gone, but the groove still plays if you press the stylus just right. It crackles like static, pops like rain on rusted tin, but then it sings, and the sound is everything the world isn't right now. Slow, improvisational, aching without apology, like someone trying to shape sorrow into breath. I don't know if you'll hear it clearly. The frequencies aren't stable. My transmitter is older than most people I used to know, but if you catch even a thread of it, Let it wrap around you. Let it remind you that there were once rooms filled with sound, with breath, with brass and bass and bodies moving in time. That music once existed because we had the space to feel. This is Miles Harrington, still broadcasting, still surviving. The tower still holds. Barely. 3 bolts out, 1 crossbeam sagging. The ladder groans with every rung, rust flaking like old paint. I carry the transmitter slung over my back, strapped down with braided cable, and a promise that I'll try just once more. Up here, the light isn't golden anymore. It's white, raw. Like the sky's been stripped of every filter. No gradients, no dusk. Just a glare you feel in your teeth. I squint through it and see no clouds. No birds. No movement. Only the shimmer. That endless boil of air meeting heat and forgetting how to behave. But the signal's stronger from this height. Just enough clearance, just enough reach. And I know it might be the last time I send anything that gets past the ridge. The panel hums. Battery cells blink once, then steady. I tap the mic, check the grounding line, press record. There's a strange clarity in doing this from here, from the edge, from the height, from the burn. It's not courage, it's compulsion, habit wearing the clothes of hope. And maybe this last message won't reach anyone, but maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe all that matters is that someone climbed, so the voice could go farther than the body ever would. Before the final sign-off, I want to speak their names, not for history, not for audience, but because names are anchors. And in a world this bright, this slippery, we need weight. Marla, the blind botanist who taught us that green remembers, who said that cooling is not a temperature, but a memory. Eli, the Emberline scout who walked into a Mirage because it looked like home. Corinne, my sister, who became the night when the sun refused to leave, whose voice still echoes in these wires. Julian, tunnel technician, who tried to build cold out of broken fans and steel. His last words were, "Find the girl." I never learned if she made it. Evie, bunker nurse, held 8 children underground while the world forgot how to darken. She recorded their laughter, gave us proof that innocence could still crack the silence. Hector, the one who found verdance, who walked through ash to see something green, who brought back spores and with them something like faith. There are more. A woman named Ray, who bent light with mirrors and signed off with grace. A stranger in Sitka who left behind a Mingus record, and a single note that read, "Music is the last breath." Not all of them are dead, not officially, but the line between presence and silence is thinner now than paper, and I can't pretend to know who's crossed over and who's still listening, so I say their names to place them here, in this moment, in this breath. Because if this broadcast ends and there's no one left to hear it, let the names be the echo that survives. It's harder to speak now. The throat dries faster up here. The wind doesn't cool. It scours. The mic casing has started to blister. My voice skips when I breathe too fast, but I want to get this right. Not for clarity, not for posterity, for peace. If the sun ever sets again, I hope it finds you dreaming. Not surviving, not rebuilding, dreaming. Of water that runs cold, of wind that smells like pine, of sky so dark it hums, of constellations you don't recognize because they were never taught to you in school, only found the way real things are. I hope you find a place where the fire burned out long enough for moss to return. I hope your hands learn to plant again, not just ration. I hope silence becomes music, not warning. And if you're raising someone in this future, a child, a companion, even a voice that isn't yours, I hope you teach them to speak into the dark with kindness, not fear, to believe that even scorched soil can cradle seeds, that even after this much loss, language still matters, that radios are not ruins, they are beacons. I don't know how long this tower will hold, The signal's beginning to drop. My hands are shaking. But this is what I have left. This voice, this frequency, this belief that someone, somewhere, will hear. This is Miles Harrington, Station Zero, still broadcasting, still surviving, static crackle. Then, what, Miles? This is Ember Station 3. We have a child. She survived the fog, eyes clear, lungs clean. She speaks. We are calling her Solace. She remembers a lullaby. We're writing it down. Then silence. Then the world again. And me, frozen in the middle of a burning sky, with that voice still echoing in the back of my ribs. That word, that impossible word. Solace. Not proof, not redemption, just something soft, something possible. If this is the last thing I ever record, let it be this. There is still a child. There is still a voice. There is still a song. And maybe that's enough. This is Miles Harrington. Still